Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for the Vampire Diaries Season 6, Episode 4, Black Hole Sun. And this episode was amazing, another amazing episode, and by far the best episode of the season. There were so many things that happened in this episode, so many big reveals in this episode, some very emotional scenes, definitely, and I can't wait for next week's episode. I love the twist at the end of this episode, and let's just get to it, because overall, I really loved this episode. So, we see Kai, he's rambling and annoying Damon, who tells him to stifle it. He's literally just rambling on and on. I gotta say, I really like Kai's character, because here's the thing, I thought he was gonna be like a really menacing villain. No, he's just basically their sidekick, and he's a really fun character to watch, and I definitely really enjoy his character. So yeah, I definitely really enjoy that, and I think definitely the guy that's playing him is definitely doing a really good job. So yeah, I'm definitely really enjoying his character, as I said. So, basically, Bonnie comes in with requested supplies, and she cuts Kai loose, because, they basically had him tied to that chair, basically, and she comes up with this knife, and Damon's like, whoa, Bonnie, okay there. I thought that was really funny. And he asks Damon about what happened on May 10th, 1994, which we know is the worst night of Damon's life. And he says Bonnie's magic and his knowledges are pieces of the puzzle, and if Damon wants to tag along, he needs to share it. So Damon says it's the worst thing he ever did, and he doesn't want to talk about it, and he pretty much just doesn't want to talk about it at this point. So he's very enraptured by this, and we actually got a lot of flashbacks in this episode, which I personally really enjoyed, because it actually worked really well with what's going on right now with Stefan. Basically, in these flashbacks, Damon has just killed Lexi. He goes to Stefan's house, he shows him a newspaper, and is shocked that he can't get in the house, and Stefan asks why he shouldn't let him in, and why Damon is trying to make amends, and Damon says he's tired of tearing up New York City and just wanted a fresh start in his own bed, and Stefan introduces Zack Salvatore, who is a new character that we met, and he says he owns the house. And Zack invites him in after a threat from Stefan not to hurt him, and he asks Damon if he's ready to start over. So, Elena calls Stefan, and by the way, I was loving these flashbacks. I thought the flashbacks were definitely really well done, and we'll talk a little more about them in a little bit, but Elena calls Stefan, and they are basically on the hunt for Sarah, because of course, they don't know where Sarah went, but Elena's telling him, look, it's already too late. She already crossed the path between their town and Mystic Falls, so she already knows that she and Carolina are vampires. By the way, no Carolina in this episode, which was honestly fine. I had no problems with that. This episode was basically Elena, their plot was basically just Elena and Stefan for the whole episode, and I definitely really enjoyed that. So, Stefan is on his bike, ready to go back to Savannah, but Elena tells him this is home, and he says he has a new home now, and she calls it his fake new life, and he says he's going to go back, pack up, and go somewhere else to start over, which I thought was interesting with the flashbacks, because we kind of see that whenever someone dies that's close to Damon, close to Stefan, he likes to separate himself and basically try to start over and start a new life. And I think it definitely is very interesting that he basically thinks of death as a new way to start over. So I think that definitely is really cool how he does that. So Elena asks if he's just going to forget the past, and he says it's easier than she thinks. Of course, she forgot Damon. She completely forgot about him, and she has no idea how hypocritical she's being right now. So she says if she believes he is really happy, she'll let him go, and she says otherwise she'll harass him Enzo style. And she hops on the bike and says it's up to Matt and Jeremy if she's in Mystic Falls, and Jeremy, meanwhile, is puking, and Alaric is patting his back, and Matt calls and asks Alaric if he's found Sarah. And Matt says he's headed to talk to Tripp now, and we don't see much about that, but that's going to get intense there, because Tripp is probably going to reveal to Matt his secret. I definitely feel that Tripp is going to try to get Matt to think that, try to agree with, that these vampires are bad and everything, because that's just the way he thinks, so, Alaric asks if he's found Sarah. Matt says he's headed to talk. Oh, I just read that. Alaric has Jeremy at the clinic to get a full health screening from Joe, and he also suggests an STD screening. And Alaric tells her it's just a day in the life of an occult studies professor. And Matt shows up at Tripp's, and he hears him on the phone telling Karen that Jay was a good kid. He asks if he's okay, and Tripp says he's not, and had to notify Jay's parents that he's dead. Matt asks what happened, and Tripp asks him the same since he went to the party with Matt. He says he insisted on walking home, and says he should have made him ride with him, and Tripp is going to see Liz to make a report, and Matt offers to go along. So Then we see Kai, he's working on a secret project and tells Damon to keep on with the story because, you know, he's into it, and Bonnie prods him to continue. He says he was living there and had come home to talk the straight and narrow, and we see Stefan working on his car, and Damon's drinking squirrel blood from his flask, and Damon's disgusted, and Zack comes home from a grocery trip, and they're running a boarding house, which I think is definitely very interesting. And Damon inquires about drinking the guests, including a pregnant chick, Gail. Keep in mind, this is when Damon was basically a ripper. So, Stefan says they're on Vervain and to leave them be, but Bonnie and Kai ask if he killed the pregnant woman, and Damon gets annoyed, and Kai explains they will harness the power of the eclipse using a mystical relic he's looking for. He says the relic belonged to his family. He says they need to do a locator spell, and Bonnie is ready to get witchy about it. You know, she basically, of course, is all about Bonnie's magic, and you know, she's ready to perform some spells. So, Elena's looking at photos on Stefan's phone of he and Ivy, and she says she was cute, and she's at Stefan's auto shop with him, and he shows her his paltry paycheck and says he's pretending to be as human as possible. He's even going under an alter ego, you know, that's how much he has fooled people, basically, and that's how much he has started over. So, Stefan talks about Damon, and Elena says she has some insulting things about him, and this takes him by surprise again, because again, he has no idea that this has happened to her. He has no idea that she had her memory wiped and everything, so he's trying to convince her that his new life is fun, and Joe tells Alaric that Jeremy is quite, you know, he has some drinking problems, and says she put him on a saline trip, and she tells Jeremy him Jeremy needs a kick in the ass, and they talk about their idiocracies as students. And Alaric swoons when he sees a patient with blood on them, and Joe thinks he was ignoring her talk and is annoyed, and she walks away. So Elena tells Stefan she's worried about Sarah outing her, and he says if she does, she can just start over somewhere else like he did. And Stefan tells her he's going to show her how to shortcut the system. And I thought this scene was definitely very interesting. Basically, they kind of have this plan. They're going to make it seem like they're a couple. Basically, he fake proposes to her. He calls her Elena Williams, and he says she's his best friend, always has loved her, and then starts to propose. She asks if he's doing it because she's pregnant, and, you know, they really got a good scene going on here. And basically, they hug, and he tells her new identities and lives are that easy. And I thought that was definitely very interesting. That Stefan is basically just lying to everyone, and I think that definitely is, you know, definitely a very interesting twist that he's doing that. You know, I definitely really enjoyed that. So, Damon flies oversized paper airplanes while Bonnie is trying to work the locator spell. He's nagging her and says she sucks at magic, and Kai says to ignore him and says he had a ton of fun, he had a ton of siblings, he had to tune out. And Damon calls him Big Brother and tells him to buy Bonnie a drink before he gets up on her. And we see Damon chatting up Liz, and I thought this scene was definitely very well done. Basically, we find out that Damon actually knew Liz back in the day. You know, this is before, this is when Caroline was a baby, and Zack and Gail are posing for a Polaroid, and Stefan snaps. He sees a mark on the pregnant woman's wrist and asks how it happened. She says she doesn't remember. He goes to ask Damon what he did, and Damon compels Liz to go home. He says he swapped the Vervain coffee out last week. He tells Stefan he's snacking, not killing, and Stefan ends up snapping his brother's neck, and that was huge what happened there. So Bonnie's working on her spell, and the blood runs towards Mystic Falls, and Bonnie says it's close and touches Kai, and she puts her hand on his heart and says it's right here, and he pulls it down and tells her very good, and it's the Ascendant, which is a relic they need, and he says the locator spell, which is a test to see if her magic is ready, and he says it is, and he tells them to pack their bags because they're going home. And basically, Damon wakes to Stefan glaring at him. He asks Damon why he even came back to cheat, lie, and break all the rules. And Damon says he lied because he knew he's been mad. He walks to Stefan but has to stop because he hits a shaft of sunlight that burns him. Because Stefan took his daylight ring and says he'll get it back once he can behave. And Damon says he came back for him and asked him to come take a road trip with him. But Stefan says Damon will leave a trail of bodies and turning Stefan dark, drinking human blood. And I thought this scene was definitely really well done. And this really makes sense as to why Damon thinks this is the worst day of his life. Because basically this was the day where everyone pretty much hated him, wasn't going right for him. He reminds him of all the times he has tried to turn him dark, betray him, and hurt his friends. And Stefan says he has a new life, and Damon says he doesn't want to destroy it. But Stefan says all he has to do is exist to screw up his life. Which I think is definitely a very interesting line because, you know, Damon kind of has done a lot of damage to his life. And I think that was definitely very interesting. So Stefan makes it clear he doesn't want him around, and the road trip is definitely a no. So he can tell that right away, and I thought that was definitely very, very sad. So Elena's reporting to Stefan that Enzo is missing. Again, she has no idea that Stefan actually killed Enzo. And Sarah hasn't turned up, and he tells her Enzo's probably out killing other guys' girlfriends. He says you have to reinvent yourself every 30 years so no one knows you're not aging. And he talks about all the jobs he's had, and Elena says he's been, like, a lot of jobs. Construction worker, a lot of jobs, definitely. And she says how he needs to talk about his brother. But Stefan can't handle her referring to Damon so dispassionately. He's very surprised because, of course, weeks ago, like, say, the first episode of the season, she was so passionate about it, and he's very surprised that she's just basically let go of it, So, he ends up changing the subject, and, I was like, okay, definitely Stefan's starting to get a lot more suspicious here of what's going on. So, Kai is trying to align the Ascendant to come to the coming eclipse, and he says it has to be at the highest power, and Bonnie notices the newspaper on the yard with a story about a family massacre in Portland, where Kai is from. And it looks like he was the only survivor, and Kai is there and says not all of them died, and he makes it clear he killed all of his siblings. And he says he had to put a knife in one, drown one in the pool, but says that one kept fighting him, and Bonnie's in shock, and he says they were a coven, but he says he has power no more, he has no more power, and he says the Gemini coven banished him there. And Bonnie says it's a prison they created for him, and it turns out, and I thought this was a very good twist, that it's actually not Damon's hell, it's his hell. So, I thought that was an awesome twist. I definitely really enjoyed that, and definitely, one of the things I loved about that twist was the way that scene was done. I thought that was an amazing scene. I personally loved it. I thought that was just such a great twist, and I loved everything about that. I thought that was fantastic. So, Alaric and Jeremy are in the woods. They're sparring, and Alaric punched him in the face, and Jeremy says it's not a fair fight since he's basically an original. And Alaric reminds him he killed an original before, and he asks what his problem is, and Jeremy says Bonnie is dead, and she said bye over the phone, just so Elena, Alaric, Stefan, and Tyler, and Enzo can come back, and he says she saved everyone but him. And I thought this scene was very well done, because it really shows all the pain, all the problems that Alaric has gone through. I mean, if you think about it, Alaric really has had the worst road out of everyone. I mean, he lost his wife, basically Damon turned her, and then they became friends, and he misses her now. He says he had resentment for years, but says you have to find a way to keep going. Of course, then Jenna died, just a lot of shit happened, and they go back to, and of course, Alaric and Jenna did have that very passionate relationship before Jenna died, so, he's talking about how you have to get over that, and they go back to their brawling, and Alaric says this should keep Jeremy's head out of the bottle, and I thought that was just such a great scene, because Jeremy really, this whole season, so far has been a couch potato. He's been a complete couch potato. He has basically just not cared about anything. He's in total I don't give a shit mode throughout the whole season, but I do agree with Alaric. You can only go so far with that, and you have to come to a point where you can just let go of all that and move on. I thought that was just a great thing that he said to him, definitely. So Elena is ready to leave Stefan in Savannah. They hug it out and she goes, and there's a shady guy at the bar who passes a slip of paper to the bartender, and he comes across, and as I say, it comes across as very shady, and Stefan approaches him and asks why he wasn't celebrating his engagement. But the guy says that Stefan put his brother in the hospital, and Stefan messes with him. The guy smacks him in the head with a bottle. Just a really intense scene at this point. Stefan asks if that's all he has, and tells him to hit him. Stefan lets the guy beat on him, then kick him in the face. He laughs, and the guy's annoyed, and so Elena's there, and compels the guy to go home, forget this happened. She asks Stefan what the hell he's doing, and that was definitely extremely intense what happened. I was not expecting that, but, definitely that was crazy. So Damon is ready to leave, but Bonnie says they can't let Kai out. She asks if he thinks it's okay since Damon himself murdered a pregnant woman, and he pulls a face and she asks if she's wrong. And then we see back in 1994, the house door is open and Zack and Stefan hear a scream, and Damon says the eclipse party is awesome and says the sun didn't even touch him when he came across the yard. And Damon has the knife to the pregnant girl's neck, and he tells Stefan that he never made Stefan bad. He just reminded him who he is. And Damon demands his ring back, and Stefan tosses it to him. He chomps into the woman's neck, reminds Stefan he promised him an eternity of misery. He is killed on all of the others at the party, too. He zips out top speed, and Zack runs to see if he can save Gail. So, he, of course, wants to save her. And we basically find out that, yes, he did kill this woman, and that is basically why this was the worst day of his life, because he killed his cousin's, girlfriend or wife or whatever she was. Definitely he feels very bad about that, you can tell, and I think that definitely is very interesting. So Kai approaches Bonnie, who he was listening to the story, and Damon says that after that, Stefan compelled Zack to make him forget the death of his pregnant girlfriend, but the murders were too big of a mess to cover up. He says that's what triggered the restart of the Founders Council, and says that he and Stefan both left for 15 years, and basically, this is why it's the worst day of his life, because he ruined everything. He killed Zack once he came back, which made him feel better and got rid of some of the guilt, and Kai tells them he just wants to get out and go punish the Gemini Coven for what they did to him, and says it's a win-win. And Damon tells Bonnie he's not a model citizen, but he tells her that he has to get back to Stefan and Elena. And Kai goes for Bonnie and Damon, but Damon slams him against the wall, threatens him if he ever touches her again. And that was definitely really crazy. So Matt asks Tripp why he and Liz don't get along. He says his wife, Chris, went to high school with Liz, and they were rivals, and he says she died in a car accident, that's why he left Mystic Falls. We know the real reason why, because he hates vampires, and Matt asks Tripp what he told Liz, and he says an animal attack, and Matt says Jay said something crazy, that he was tracking a vampire, and Tripp says he has something to show him. So, that definitely is very interesting. When he said that, I'm like, okay, what is he about to show him here? So, Stefan admits he lets people rough him up so he can feel something, and Elena tells him she went through the grief over Bonnie but worked through it. She says Damon doesn't deserve his grief, and he tells her that she had Alaric compel, and basically he finds out what's going on here. I thought this was a great scene because finally Elena's done with this whole forgetting about Damon thing. He basically tells her the straight out truth that she had Alaric compel her to forget all the good about Damon because she couldn't get over it. And he tells her she and Damon were in love and she doesn't believe it. You know, she doesn't believe a second of this because, of course, you know, her memories were wiped away. So she doesn't believe a word of what he's saying to her. And it definitely is very sad because, of course, you know, they really did love each other. They were a true couple. I mean, she felt genuine sorrow when he died. She killed people. I mean, she just was completely unstable. And, you know, he says how Damon inspired her and pushed her and she made him feel human. And he says she and him both love Damon for the same reasons. He says she chose to live without remembering the loss, but he has to. And he tells her to let him do his grief his way and she can do hers her way. And I thought that was a great scene because, as I said, Elena is basically a hypocrite here. She wants Stefan to get over the death of Ivy when she basically just got herself out of it in the wrong way, you know, to get her to completely forget about Damon. It hasn't done anything, and all it's done is just made people more upset, and I definitely agree with what Stefan is saying, that she needs to move on and basically, you know, figure that, hey, he died, and she needs to understand that, and I think definitely I agree with what Stefan said there. So she is completely stunned at this since everyone else has been so careful not to tell her. And my question is, you know, definitely Caroline's going to find out. What is Caroline's reaction to this going to be? Because, of course, she said to all of them that one of the things they're not to tell Elena is that about her, you know, Alaric compelling her to forget. So I think that definitely is very interesting. And I think it's also very interesting that that's basically over with. I knew that was only going to last for a few episodes, but I didn't think it'd last, like, only 2 episodes. So I'm actually happy about that because as much as I like seeing Elena happy, I was not a fan of her completely forgetting everything about Damon. You know, I was not exactly happy about that. So Tripp and Matt pull up at a storage shed out of the boonies, and Matt asks what this is, and Tripp says it's a secret he only shares with people he trusts. He asks if he remembers the gas leak over the summer, and he says he came back over in to check on his grandma, but when he crossed over the town border, memories came flooding back, and he remembers his wife didn't die in a car accident, and we find out why Tripp basically is killing these vampires. Because his wife was killed by a vampire, which I think, sorry guys, I'm getting something, sorry, I'm getting a Facebook message. Sorry about that. But, basically, she was killed by a vampire, and the murderer made him believe he was responsible. So he opens the door, turns on the light, and Matt sees Enzo there. And Tripp tells him vampires are real, and one murdered his wife, and he tells him that the one that murdered Jay, and says he's going to make them tell them who bit his friend Sarah. So that is huge because, of course, now we know he's going after Elena. Elena's in really big, bad shit now because we know that she was the one that did it. And I don't know if Matt knows, but a lot of people definitely know. And this is not going to end well for anyone. And I thought that was just a genius twist would happen there. And now we actually know why Tripp did this. You know, this is basically a vigilante mission for him because he's avenging his wife's death and he feels he was responsible for it. So he's taking out all the vampires, and it makes sense why he's doing that. You know, he's not doing it just to do it. He's doing it because he is avenging his wife's death, which I think that is an amazing twist, and I love that. So Jeremy comes home and he finds Sarah there. And she tells him to stay back or she'll call out Elena. And he asks what she wants, and she shows him the Polaroid of Zack and Gail, who, of course, was that pregnant woman. And we basically find out that Gail was, she says her mom's body was still warm, and they brought her to the hospital. She says she was 6 months pregnant, and she says a doctor did an emergency C-section. She lived there for 3 months in an incubator. So definitely she's gone through a lot of bad shit, and basically Gail was her mother, but her mom was dead. She never knew who her father was. And Jeremy tells her that her dad is Zack Salvatore. And that's huge. And he's dead, though. So, obviously, she's going to have a lot of problems with that. Does she know her father is dead? That's my question. Because she was a baby when he died. She lived in an incubator for 3 months. And, after after that, basically Damon killed him. So my question is, does Sarah know that Zack is dead? Because I think Sarah is going to want to meet Zack. So my thinking here is that she's going to want to meet Zack, but she's going to find out he's dead. And I really like that because it's made Sarah's character more interesting. I definitely really enjoy that a lot about her character. And I'm very, very interested in seeing what's going to happen there. I think that definitely is really cool. So Elena goes back to see Alaric and asks how he could have wiped her memory, and he tells her he has his own issues and doesn't know what's best. He hands her her journal and says it can explain better than he can, and she looks at photos of her and Damon, and the journal has an entry she wrote to herself explaining why she got rid of the memories because she couldn't bear the loss of her soulmate. And it says that Alaric can restore the lost memories, but she doesn't think she should because the pain is too much to bear. She says to try and recover without going there. She wrote that she should give herself a chance in a new life, but Elena doesn't want the memories back now, but asks him to keep it safe in case she wants it back, because, I think that definitely is very good. But I do think eventually Elena is going to want to get these memories back. I definitely feel she is going to ask him. I definitely like where this is heading, because now she's going to want to definitely find out, more about Damon, find out more about what happened there. And, I like that she's trying to start out a new life, but I don't think this is going to work for Elena. I definitely feel Elena's going to ask him. She's going to come to the point where she has to ask him. Definitely. She has to. So, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what happens there, and I think that was a great way to, end that storyline. And then we see, Bonnie says Damon has been making pancakes every day because she remembers that's what the pregnant woman liked, and that's why he made the pancakes. And she says he's punishing himself, which means he can be salvaged, unlike Kai. And he tells her they can steal the relic and get out without Kai. But Kai is there and says it's not that simple. And Kai says he can't generate magic, but he can consume it from others. So that definitely is very interesting. He says his family called into him an abomination. He grabs Bonnie's wrist, uses her power to keep Damon back with flames, and Kai says he can kill Bonnie by consuming all her magic, or they can work together and all go home as friends. And he says he can use her magic, kill them both, and go home alone. He asks them what they think as he takes a bite of pancakes. So basically now they have to make a choice here. They're either, basically they're either his best friend or his worst enemy. And the question is, what do they want to be? And if, one hand, they can all get out of here, but the other hand, he's going to kill Bonnie. And if he kills Bonnie, then they're basically screwed. I don't think they're going to kill Bonnie, because if they kill Bonnie, then this whole entire plot would be pointless. Basically, that's basically what would happen here, that this whole entire plot would be pointless. And I'd be really pissed if they killed Bonnie, because it would make no sense for them to do that. So I really hope that, they decide to go back with him. However, I do feel they are going to kill Kai. There has to be a way to kill him. I mean, there just has to be. There has to be at this point. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what's going to happen there. I think that's going to be really intense, and really looking forward to that as well. Now, the very last scene of the episode, I was very surprised by this, because Stefan's working on a car shop when someone peers in the window, and he hears a noise and turns. Now, I wasn't sure who this was going to be. I was thinking maybe it might be that guy again that beat him up. I was wondering what's going to happen there. It turns out that it's Ivy. Yes, Ivy is actually not dead. She is alive, and she says Enzo made her drink his blood, and now she's so thirsty. Her mouth is covered in blood, and she's a Ripper, and now Ivy's a Ripper. And I love this twist. I think that's an amazing twist. I love that with her character. And the thing is, I really liked Ivy's character. I knew something was going to happen to Ivy. I knew that there was going to be something about her character, and now we know that she's a Ripper. We know that she's a Ripper, and I think it's great that they brought the Ripper storyline back, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what happens here. Just in time for Halloween, because next week is the Halloween episode, which is always the craziest episodes. Well, either that or some sort of dance episode. If there's a dance, then you know shit's gonna go down. But this episode was amazing. I loved it. I loved everything that happened in it. And let's talk about a few things here. First of all, Elena. I definitely feel Elena is going to try to get those memories back eventually. Like, maybe in the next episode, she's going to try to move on without Damon, but it's not exactly going to work out for her. And then she's going to be like to Alaric, look, I want to get these memories back. Because she's obviously going to come to a point where she wants these memories back. Now she knows she can. I do think she's going to take this opportunity and try to get them back. Damon and Bonnie, they have definitely a very difficult choice to make, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what's going to happen between the two of them. You know, I definitely feel that somehow they're going to kill Kai, because we know that Kai is their target, and we know that they want to kill him, and we know that whatever happens, they basically just want Kai dead, and that's how they want to get out of this, is to kill him. So, I'm definitely interested in seeing what's going to happen with their plots. Ivy being a Ripper, this is not going to be good. Definitely, Stefan's probably going to be forced to kill Ivy just because she's a Ripper, and, you know, they can't have this Ripper around right now. Tripp's plot, I think, is amazing. I definitely really loved what's going on with Tripp, and definitely the question is Matt actually going to work with him? And definitely Elena's screwed at this point, because, you know, a lot of people know that Elena killed, was the one that, basically bit Sarah, so he definitely is, you know, Elena's in a lot of deep shit for that, and definitely I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen there as well. I love that plot. And as far as Sarah goes, I think she's going to want to see Zack, but eventually she's going to find out that he's dead, and it's not going to end up well for her in the end. But that's basically it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. I thought this episode was absolutely amazing. I was totally into it the entire time. By far best episode of the season. I loved it so much. Especially the scene where Stefan told Elena the truth. I thought that was great. And Stefan might just be my favorite character on the show. Also, guys, what do you think of the flashbacks? I thought the flashbacks were great. We really found out a lot more. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Let me know what you guys saw this of, you know, what's going to happen in the next episode. You know, next episode is the Halloween episode, so it's going to get crazy. Did Caroline need to be in this episode? I honestly felt like Caroline did not need to be in this episode, just because of the way the episode was constructed. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for another classic horror movie review. So I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.